And this isn't an election between President Trump and Joe Biden. This is an election between President Trump and the globalists who want to carve up America and sell it to the highest bidder. There are vast amounts of evidence that foreign entities have meddled in this election, not the least of which is China, a nation with an obvious interest in getting rid of President Trump and putting in someone who's easy to control. Maybe someone whose family has already accepted over $1 billion from the communist Chinese government. Someone like Joe Biden? So let's take a second and break down the election and see exactly where things stand. While many states have already been called for the predictable winners, there are 6 key battleground states where the levels of fraud are off the charts. Let's start with Nevada, because that was one the Democrats thought they'd win handily. The official story is that Biden won the state by 33,000 votes. That's a good margin. Should be a clear win, except it's not. It turns out about 1,500 people who voted in Nevada's elections are dead. Another 2,500 changed their addresses to another state or even another country. Some 6,000 voters were flagged by the post office as having vacant addresses. 8,000 voters cast ballots from addresses that don't even exist. 15,000 people somehow voted from vacant or commercial properties. 20,000 voters somehow cast their ballots from out-of-state addresses. And the big one, a whopping 42,000 voters successfully voted twice in the election. Now, even without knowing who all these people voted for, Republicans and Democrats should want to get this cleared up and ensure our election integrity is being maintained, not just when your guy is winning. So they say Joe Biden is up in Nevada by 33,000 votes. Well, right there, that is 95,000 fraudulent votes, which should automatically put the state back in the running for President Trump. But Nevada isn't alone. It's a similar situation in Pennsylvania, where Biden won by 81,000 votes. But the thousands of dead and out-of-state voters in Pennsylvania add up fast, and in the end come out to some 121,000 fraudulent ballots cast in the election. It's the same story in Wisconsin, where Joe Biden apparently won by 20,000 votes. But in reality, some 200,000 fraudulent ballots were cast in Wisconsin, again totally erasing Biden's lead. In Arizona, the AP called the election for Biden, claiming he was up by 10,000 votes. But Arizona is even worse than Wisconsin, with over 300,000 fraudulent or questionable ballots cast in the state. In Michigan, Biden is reportedly up by 154,000 ballots, but that's only until you count the more than 500,000 fraudulent ballots that have trickled in since Election Day. And then, of course, there's Georgia, where Biden somehow managed to swing the bright red peach state to blue, coming in ahead with 12,000 votes. Except that now we have mountains of evidence of voting fraud, including Republican poll watchers being forced to leave under false pretenses so that poll workers could count secret stashes of ballots unobserved for hours. It's worth mentioning, during that time, the number of votes for Biden skyrocketed while those for Trump simultaneously plummeted. That leaves Georgia with more than 200,000 fraudulent votes, meaning Biden is clearly not the winner. This is the situation we're dealing with. The evidence for fraud is greater than it ever has been, and yet the mainstream media and Democrats are completely ignoring it. Or worse, they're actually complicit in covering up the greatest election fraud in American history, all with the goal of undermining democracy and overthrowing the duly elected President of the United States.
Hi everyone, it is Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Thanks for joining me for another edition of Alternative News. And if you look at the lower third of the screen, you'll see the text scrolling across the screen, and you'll see the top stories that we're going to be talking about this evening. So you just heard the gentleman there describing the election fraud, and that is related to the story over 1 million fraudulent votes in 6 key states. So that was what you were just listening to there. And then coming up next, I've got something interesting to present to you regarding the head of Israel's space program, talking about aliens. So let's see what I've got here. So here's the gentleman here, and there's some additional information. So this gentleman's name is Haim Ashed, and Professor Haim Ashed served from 1981 to 2010 as the head of Israel's security space program, and over the years received the Israel Security Award 3 times, twice for confidential technological inventions. And he said, oops, let me try to make it so we can see it better. He said the UFOs have asked not to publish that they are here. Humanity is not ready yet. Trump was on the verge of revealing, but the aliens in the Galactic Federation are saying, wait, let people calm down first. They don't want to start mass hysteria. They want to first make us sane and understanding. They have been waiting for humanity to evolve and reach a stage where we will generally understand what space and spaceships are. There's an agreement between the U.S. government and the aliens. They signed a contract with us to do experiments here. They too are researching and trying to understand the whole fabric of the universe, and they want us as helpers. There's an underground base in the depths of Mars where their representatives are, and also our American astronauts. If I had come up with what I'm saying today 5 years ago, I would have been hospitalized. Wherever I've gone with this in academia, they've said the man has lost his mind. Today they're already talking differently. I have nothing to lose. I've received my degrees and awards. I am respected in universities abroad, where the trend is also changing. So that is interesting because of who it's coming from. If you look at the person, this gentleman who's saying these things, and so this was published in a story in an Israeli newspaper, and it was the biggest Israeli newspaper, I guess that isn't free, that you have to pay for. Did a story on that, and that's where he made those statements. So no, I wouldn't necessarily believe everything he says, and but I do think that some of that is possible. Possibly underground, under Mars, there could be something, and bases or whatever, and also the idea that we're not ready, and that beings would view us that way is also very possible and very likely, because really we're not. And until we overcome things like election fraud and things like that, we're really not free. So we need to regain the freedoms that the Founding Fathers intended for us to have, I think, before we are going to be worrying about space travel and stuff like that. On the other hand, his comments about them making a deal and experiments and stuff like that sounds just like more of the same nonsense that we've been hearing, borderline Hollywood sort of stories and stuff like that I wouldn't necessarily believe. But anyway, that's the information. I'm not saying it's true or isn't true. I'm not telling you what to believe or not believe. And then so there's more also here The big story this past week has been all of this evidence that's coming forward about election fraud. And we're going to, before I quit and wrap it up, we're going to go over the biggest piece that some of you may have heard about is the machine that they used, and they put an equal number of votes in it to test it, and they saw that it was rigged, that you put an equal number of votes in for Trump and Biden, but more come out for Biden. So that story, my understanding is it came from Twitter and this gentleman here. So Rob Hurst, just on December 6th, a couple days ago, Ware County, Georgia has broken the Dominion algorithm. Using sequestered Dominion equipment, Ware County ran an equal number of Trump votes and Biden votes through the tabulator, and the tabulator reported a 26% lead for Biden. 37 Trump votes used in the equal sample run had been switched from Trump to Biden. In actual algorithmic terms, this means that a vote for Trump was counted as 87% of a vote, and a vote for Biden was counted as 113% of a vote. Those conducting the test were so shocked that they ran the same ballots again. The same results appeared. One piece of the puzzle solved. And the Dominion tabulators could have been configured with different algorithms in different counties or states. The point is, there is now hard evidence of electronic manipulation of the election. The use of illegal and or fabricated ballots is an additional issue altogether, but this is sufficient evidence to question the validity of the entire election in the 28 states that use Dominion software. Source Debbie Browning, and it lists kind of a source there. So, but before I wrap it up, in retrospect, because we have such a division in our government, in the military, in intelligence and stuff like that, with all of this deep state nonsense on one hand, and then you have true Americans, patriotic gentlemen like General McInerney on the other hand, as an example. John D'Souza and, Brad Johnson, gentlemen like that for intelligence reform, on the other hand. So it's not hard to imagine that excuse me that some what people might think of as aliens may be trying to make deals with certain people who don't have our who aren't representing us and don't have our best interests at heart. So that I know that's possible, that's likely, and so that's something that we have to watch out for. And my point in closing is that we have to remember, and John D'Souza touches on this as well, that what another thing is what they always call aliens and what we think of as aliens and stuff are that's a materialistic way of looking at it and thinking of it. They're spiritual beings. These are spiritual beings that can only be understood from a spiritual perspective. Some of them are beneficial, some of them are not. And until they're understood from the proper spiritual perspective, that's another thing that is going to need to happen before we start talking about space travel and stuff like that.